It was a warm summer evening in Willow Creek, the kind of evening where the lake shimmered under the fading sun and families gathered on porches to share laughter. But for Dr. Samuel Carter, the peacefulness was shattered by a sound he would never forget: his elderly neighbor collapsing on the front lawn. "Call 911, Samuel shouted, already sprinting across the grass. His training as an emergency physician kicked in immediately. He checked her pulse, shallow and fading. "Stay with me, Mrs. Jensen. Stay with me," he whispered, applying CPR as his wife dialed. The phone rang once. Twice. Then the operator's calm voice, "911. What's your emergency?" "My neighbor, she collapsed." "I'm a doctor. I need EMS now." Samuel barked, sweat dripping as he pressed down rhythmically on her chest. But within minutes, before the ambulance could even arrive, the familiar sound of heavy boots echoed across the cul-de-sac. 3 men in dark uniforms, not EMTs, not police, but the HOA security patrol. The leader, broad-shouldered, wearing sunglasses even in the dusk, strode forward. His badge didn't read police, but Community Enforcement Division. "What's going on here?" he demanded. Samuel looked up, his voice urgent but controlled. "She's having a cardiac arrest time trying to save her. EMTs are on the way." But instead of helping, the man's lip curled. "You can't perform medical procedures on HOA property without authorization. Step away from her." Samuel froze, disbelief flooding him. "What? Are you out of your mind? This is a life-or-death emergency." The guard's hand moved to his belt, where a taser glinted under the fading light. "Sir," Samuel said firmly, his doctor's authority taking over, "this woman will die if I stop. You are interfering with a medical emergency. Stand back." But the HOA enforcer wasn't used to being challenged. He stepped closer, towering over Samuel, shouting, "I said step away." Mrs. Jensen's granddaughter screamed from the porch, tears streaming down her face. "Please, let him help her. She's dying." Samuel ignored the yelling, pressing harder, counting the compressions under his breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. Come on, breathe, and then crack. The taser fired. Pain ripped through his body like lightning, his muscles locking up, his body collapsing onto the lawn beside his patient. "No," his wife screamed, running to his side. "He's a doctor who's saving her life." Mrs. Jensen's chest fell silent. The rhythm of hope vanished. By the time the ambulance finally pulled in, it was too late. She was gone. The paramedics rushed out, confused by the sight: an elderly woman lifeless on the ground, and a respected physician handcuffed, still shaking from the taser. "What happened here?" one EMT demanded, glaring at the HOA guards. "Community violation," the leader said smugly. "Unauthorized medical activity." The EMT looked at Samuel, his eyes full of fury, and whispered, This is criminal." That night, the neighborhood erupted in outrage. Families gathered, whispering, sobbing, angry voices carrying across the still waters of the lake. Mrs. Jensen had been a beloved figure, the grandmotherly heart of Willow Creek. And Samuel, he wasn't just any neighbor. He was the man who had saved dozens of lives at the county hospital. But instead of being hailed a hero, he sat bruised, taser burns on his chest, a citation in his hand from the HOA claiming he had violated emergency safety regulations. His wife Hannah sat beside him, her voice trembling. "Sam, this isn't just wrong, it's evil. They let her die. And they attacked you." Samuel's jaw tightened, his voice low, breaking with emotion. "I swore an oath to do no harm." And then he paused, shaking his head. "They stopped me from saving her. They killed her." The following morning, word spread fast. The local paper picked up the story. HOA security tases doctor during 911 call. Neighbor dies. The HOA board tried to spin it. It claimed Samuel had acted aggressively and that their patrol followed community protocol. But neighbors who had witnessed the tragedy weren't buying it. Old Mr. Hargrove, who had lived on the street for 40 years, told reporters, "I saw it. That doctor was saving her life, and then those so-called security guards took it from her. This community isn't safe anymore." The HOA board held an emergency meeting in the clubhouse that evening. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Residents shouted, demanded answers. "You tased a doctor during a 911 call," one woman yelled. "Do you even realize how insane that sounds?" Board President Linda Masters, her pearl necklace glinting under the fluorescent lights, raised her hand for silence. "Ladies and gentlemen, please." Our security team acted within their rights. The HOA has protocols to prevent liability. We can't just allow anyone to perform medical procedures without authorization. What if you made it worse? A murmur of disbelief swept through the room. Samuel, standing at the back with bruises still visible, spoke at last. His voice was calm, but each word cut like steel. Double quotes, "Mrs. Jensen didn't die because of a heart attack. She died because you chose control over compassion. Because your so-called rules mattered more than her life. And make no mistake, this is not the end." The room went silent. Neighbors turned to look at him, some with tears, others with fire in their eyes. Linda shifted uncomfortably, her confidence faltering for just a moment. "Are you threatening us, Doctor?" "Carter, no," he said, his voice steady. "I'm promising you justice." That night, Samuel contacted an attorney. Not just any attorney, but a federal civil rights lawyer who specialized in cases of abuse of power. The lawyer listened carefully, his voice firm. "Doctor Carter, what they did wasn't just negligence. It was assault. It was obstruction of a medical emergency. And under federal law, it could amount to deprivation of rights under color of law." Samuel sat silently, fists clenched, the weight of it all pressing down on him. Finally, he whispered, "Then let's make them answer for it." The lawyer nodded. "We're not just filing charges. We're going after them for everything's federal charges, civil rights violations. And a lawsuit so big they'll never forget the day they put their hands on you." And so it began. The lawsuit hit like a thunderclap. Doctor files $5 million federal lawsuit against Willow Creek HOA after being tased during 911 call. The HOA board scrambled, their smug confidence shattered. Neighbors rallied behind Samuel, leaving flowers on his porch, handwritten notes that read, "Thank you for standing up for us. Don't stop." For Samuel, it wasn't about money. It was about truth. It's about justice for Mrs. Jensen. About making sure no one else in Willow Creek or anywhere would ever face what he had faced. But he had no idea. It's just how far the HOA would go to silence him. Because for some people, power matters more than life itself. The morning after the lawsuit was filed, Willow Creek looked different. Neighbors who once avoided confrontation now gathered in small clusters, whispering about the board. Some were angry, others scared. But one thing was clear. The HOA wasn't going to take this lying down. Samuel knew it too. As he sipped his coffee on the porch, he saw the first Cyan unmarked SUV parked at the end of his street. "Two men inside pretending to check their phones. They're watching us," Hannah whispered, her hand trembling as she held the curtain back. "They want us to feel afraid," Samuel replied, his voice steady though his jaw clenched. "But fear only works if we let it." By the following week, the smear campaign had begun. Flyers appeared in mailboxes. "Doctor or dangerous. Samuel Carter, under investigation." The pamphlet claimed Samuel had illegally practiced medicine without a TESA, license in community spaces, and posed a threat to resident safety. Anna stormed into the living room, with one of the flyers crushed in her fist. "They're lying about you, Sam. Everyone knows you're a licensed doctor. This is slander." Samuel took the paper, scanning it with quiet fury. "They're not after the truth. They're after my reputation. If they can destroy my credibility, they can weaken the lawsuit." Just then, the phone rang. It was his attorney, James. "Sam, brace yourself. The HOA just filed a counter-complaint. They're claiming you attacked their officer during the incident." Samuel's voice dropped. "They tased me while I was doing CPR, and now they're saying I attacked them." "That's how they play," James said. "But don't worry, we have witnesses. And the EMT report is ironclad. This counter-complaint won't hold, but—" he hesitated. "It's going to get uglier before it gets better." Later that week, the HOA board held a special meeting. It was supposed to be for residents only. But word spread fast, and the clubhouse overflowed. Samuel sat quietly in the back, while Linda Masters, the board president, took the stage with her polished smile. "Good evening, Willow Creek," she began smoothly. "I know many of you are concerned about recent events. But let me assure you, your board is dedicated to safety and order. Unfortunately, some individuals are attempting to tarnish our community's reputation with baseless lawsuits." A man in the crowd shouted, "Baseless!" He was tased, saving a life. The room erupted, voices rising. Some shouted in support of Samuel, others in fear of the board's authority. Linda raised her voice. "Sharp now. We cannot allow mob mentality to dictate our rules. Dr. Carter violated community safety laws. Our officers acted appropriately. End of discussion." That was the moment Samuel stood. The room hushed as he walked to the front, his presence calm but commanding. "End of discussion," he said softly. "No, Mrs. Masters, this discussion is just beginning." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "You talk about safety," he continued, locking eyes with her. "But real safety means compassion. Real safety means protecting lives. It's not destroying them with tasers and lies. Mrs. Jensen is gone because your men interfered with emergency care. And instead of admitting your mistake, you cover it with slander." Linda's smile faltered. "You're twisting facts, Dr. Carter." "No," he said firmly. "I'm stating the truth. And when the federal court hears it, your lies won't protect you anymore." The crowd erupted in applause, drowning out Linda's attempt to regain control. For the first time, the board looked shaken, but the HOA wasn't finished. That night, Samuel found his car keyed, the words "traitor" scratched across the side. His mailbox was smashed. Anonymous notes appeared on his doorstep. "Leave or regret it." Hannah's voice cracked as she picked up one of the notes. "Sam, what if they hurt us? What if they hurt Emily?" Their teenage daughter stood frozen nearby, fear in her young eyes. Samuel knelt beside her, holding both Hannah and Emily close. "They want us scared. But we have the truth, and the truth is stronger than their threats." Still, he knew the danger was real. Days later, another twist, a knock at the door. 2 police officers stood outside. "Dr. Carter, we need to ask you a few questions," one said. Inside the station, Samuel was blindsided. The HOA had filed a police report accusing him of assaulting their officer and interfering with security operations. "This is ridiculous," Samuel said, his voice shaking with controlled rage. "They attacked me while I was saving a life." The officer glanced at the file. "We have conflicting statements. Until this is sorted, you're under investigation." Walking out of the station, Samuel felt a rare flicker of despair. The system was supposed to protect the innocent, but now it felt like the HOA's shadow stretched everywhere. That night, he sat at the dining table, staring at his hands, still remembering the shock of the taser. Hannah sat beside him, touching his arm gently. "Sam, I've never seen you like this," she whispered. He looked at her, his eyes wet with unshed tears. "I became a doctor to save lives, and now they're painting me as a criminal. Sometimes I wonder. Maybe it would be easier if we just moved away." Her grip tightened. "No, if we walk away, they win. And Mrs. Jensen's death will mean nothing. You always told me healing means standing in the hardest places. This is one of them." Her words cut through his despair. Samuel nodded slowly, resolve hardening again. "You're right. I won't let them bury the truth." The turning point came when James, his lawyer, secured a copy of the EMT body cam footage. It showed everything: Samuel performing CPR, the HOA officer shouting, and then clear as day as a taser firing while neighbors screamed in horror. When James played the footage in his office, this proves it all. James leaned forward, his tone grim but triumphant. "This isn't just a lawsuit anymore. This is a federal case of civil rights abuse. We'll bring in the Department of Justice if we have to." The next hearing shook the community. Reporters crowded the courthouse steps, cameras flashing. Samuel walked in with his family, neighbors cheering behind him, holding signs that read, "Justice for Mrs. Jensen, doctors save lives." Not HOAs inside. The HOA's attorney tried to dismiss the case, claiming community authority. But when the judge watched the footage, his expression darkened. He looked at the HOA's lawyer, his voice sharp. "This video shows a man performing CPR on a dying woman. And your client's officer chose to taser him? You call that protocol? I call it criminal negligence. Gasps filled the courtroom. Linda Masters and her board shifted uncomfortably, sweat visible on their brows. The judge banged his gavel. This case is moving forward to federal court. Samuel exhaled, a weight lifting off his shoulders. Justice was still far away, but for the first time, it felt possible. That night, Samel stood by the lake, the moon shimmering on the water. Hannah joined him, slipping her hand into his. "Do you think we'll win?" she asked softly. He gazed at the reflection, thinking of Mrs. Jensen's gentle smile. "We don't just have to win," he said quietly. "We have to make sure no one ever abuses power like this again. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about every family who lives in fear of people who think rules matter more than lives." And in that moment, Samuel knew this fight was bigger than Willow Creek. It was a fight for justice itself. The federal courthouse loomed tall, its stone pillars casting long shadows in the morning sun. Samuel adjusted his tie, his hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what this day meant. Beside him, Hannah clasped his hand tightly, her eyes filled with quiet strength. Emily, their daughter, walked between them, her young face both proud and anxious. Neighbors trailed behind, carrying signs of support. As they entered the courtroom, the air buzzed with tension. On one side sat Samuel, his attorney James, and rows of supportive residents. On the other, the HOA board Linda Masters at the center. Her pearls gleaming, but her smile tight, nervous. The case was clear. Did the HOA and its officers abuse power, obstruct emergency medical aid, and violate Samuel's civil rights? The prosecution began with the body cam footage. The courtroom was silent as the screen lit up. There it was, Samuel kneeling beside Mrs. Jensen, performing CPR with steady determination. Then the HOA officer shouting, drawing his taser, the sickening crack as Samuel convulsed, collapsing. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. One juror covered her mouth in shock. Another shook his head in disbelief. When the video ended, the prosecutor's voice rang out. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this was not safety. This was not order. This was cruelty, abuse of power, and obstruction of a man trying to save a life." Then it was Samuel's turn to testify. He stepped up. His voice calm, though his heart pounded. "I didn't think about myself that day. I thought about Mrs. Jensen. She was more than a neighbor. She was family to all of us here. And when I heard her heart stop, I did what I swore an oath to do. I tried to save her." His eyes glistened as he paused. "But I wasn't just stopped. I was attacked. They robbed her of a chance to live. And they tried to rob me of my dignity by painting me as a criminal. But this isn't about me. It's about a community that deserves compassion over control." The courtroom was still, every word sinking deep. Even some reporters wiped their eyes. The HOA's defense faltered. Linda Masters was called to the stand. Her lawyer tried to keep her steady. But under cross-examination, her cracks showed. "Mrs. Masters?" James asked, his tone sharp. "You claimed your officers followed protocol. Show us then. Where in your HOA bylaws does it say you may taser a licensed physician during a 911 emergency?" Linda stammered, flipping through papers. "Well, it's implied in our safety procedures implied," James pressed. "Or invented on the spot to justify the unjustifiable." Her face flushed. The jury watched unimpressed. Finally, James leaned closer. "Mrs. Masters, answer me this. Was Mrs. Jensen's life less important than your control?" The silence that followed was deafening. Over the next days, witness after witness testified. Mr. Hargrove, the elderly neighbor, stood with trembling hands, his voice strong despite his age. "I saw it with my own eyes. That doctor was saving her, and they ripped him away. It was murder by pride." The EMT testified too, confirming Samuel's actions were correct and life-saving. Had he continued uninterrupted, she might have had a chance. But the taser ended it. Every testimony struck another blow against the HOA. Finally, closing arguments. The prosecution's words echoed through the chamber. This case is about power abused, about life denied, about a doctor punished for doing what was right. If this can happen in Willow Creek, it can happen anywhere. The law must send a message. Compassion will always stand above control. The HOA's attorney tried to argue community authority, but the jury's faces told the truth. They weren't buying it. The jury deliberated for hours. Each minute felt like a lifetime. Samuel sat quietly, Hannah's head resting against his shoulder, Emily holding his hand. Then the doors opened. The jury returned. The foreman stood. "We find the defendants guilty." A collective gasp, followed by applause from the gallery. Reporters scrambled to capture the moment. The judge's voice rang out. "The HOA and its officers are hereby found liable for civil rights violations, obstruction of emergency medical care, and unlawful assault. Damages awarded, $5 million. Linda Masters collapsed into her chair, pale, defeated. Samuel closed his eyes, a single tear slipping down his cheek. Not for the money, but for justice, for Mrs. Jensen, for his family. For every neighbor who had lived in fear. In the days that followed, the HOA crumbled. Federal investigators swept in, dismantling its abusive community enforcement division. The officers faced criminal charges. Linda Masters resigned in disgrace, her name forever tarnished. Willow Creek changed. The people reclaimed their neighborhood, voting to dissolve the HOA entirely. The clubhouse doors were locked for good, the rules torn down. The fear lifted, at a memorial by the lake. Neighbors gathered to honor Mrs. Jensen. Flowers floated on the water as Samuel spoke. "She taught us something in her final moments," he said softly. "That compassion must always be greater than control. That love must always outweigh power. If one life is lost because rules mattered more than kindness, then we all lose. Let us never forget that." Hannah squeezed his hand, tears streaming down her face. Emily leaned against him, whispering, "Dad, you did it," smiled faintly, his heart heavy yet full. "No, sweetheart, we did it together." That evening, as the sun set over Willow Creek, Samuel sat on his porch, the breeze rustling gently through the trees. For the first time in months, the air felt peaceful again. A neighbor approached quietly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you, Sam, not just for fighting them, but for reminding us what community really means." Samuel nodded, his eyes on the horizon. A true community doesn't need tasers, or threats, or fear. It needs compassion, respect, and the courage to do what's right. And with that, the story of one man's courage against the abuse of power spread far beyond Willow Creek. People across the country read the headlines, watched the trial, and whispered the same words. If it weren't for Dr. Carter, this could have happened here, every neighborhood and every town. His story became a reminder that, no matter how small, one act of courage, one voice of truth, can stand against even the most powerful forces. And sometimes, it takes the shock of tragedy to remind us what it truly means to be human. This story is just the beginning. There is so much more ahead. Subscribe to the channel to join me on this journey.